Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Love Your Journey podcast with Tara Joe and Bailey Boo, who's sort of hidden today a little bit, looking out the window in Kelowna, BC, we're filming from. And I'm so excited today because I have asked a beautiful coach of mine to be a guest, and I've been wanting her to be a guest for quite a while. Her name is Megan Johnston. When I first knew her, she was known as a different human, Megan Siemens at that time. So if you know her, you'll know her name has changed. And I don't even really know how she came into my life, but oddly, when the right people come in, they just land. And I think it might have been through her blog. I remember seeing this beautiful human and her partner traveling the world and thinking that was super fun. And it really, I think, nudged a little in my heart about how much I love to travel. So I think that that's why I started following you. And I just wanted to talk to you today about a lot of things because we've worked together for, well, I don't know since when. I'm sure I've been following you at least since 2015.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
welcome,
I think
Megan.
hi, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here and for whatever magic unfolds for all of the listeners. And yeah, I know we've been connected since maybe 2015 or so. And then maybe first, I can remember where I was sitting when we had our first Zoom meeting.
No
So I can
way.
always remember the year based on where I was sitting because I move around quite a bit. So
Oh,
I
interesting.
think it was actually like 2021 that we actually got on Zoom, like, and had that first like
Oh,
face to face
yeah,
virtual
yeah,
meeting, which needs to be in real life at some point.
yeah. Oh, interesting. Well, I think I mean, I've seen you navigate your business in many different magical ways, and it looks so easy to, that's one of the reasons why I love being in Megan's world, no matter what she's doing, whether it's a free offering or her back to you membership container. I just love being a part of it because number one, I think the energy for you is so easeful to be around and you just always tap into the magic of life. So when I forget it, and I talk about that with my listeners often, when somebody has navigated depression as a main theme in their life, it can be very hard for us to come to this place of always feeling like life is easy. It's actually such a rewiring and a hard place to actually feel like we're living more in the joy than we are in the suffering, right? And so for me, um, I'm trying to think of like when I was in those 5 years, the dark night of the soul, as I call it. I think that's potentially when I started to follow you through your as just nuggets of wisdom. I think that I needed to plant in my heart of what life can look like. And so, and I remember reading and feeling really, told you I'd cry, really emotionally charged when you wrote about the death of your brother,
Hmm. Yeah.
Kirk.
Yeah.
And then here we are, full circle, a year after Corey, my brother, died. And it makes sense why you've been around, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think
And yeah,
those like relationships and connections, like, I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough that when you like follow that intuitive pull into a relationship, like there's a reason you're there. And when you like trust that intuition, and then on the flip side of that, like trusting that the right people are always being magnetized into your space. I feel like, yeah, we've had that connection point for a long time. And I mean, as hard as grief is, it's also special to have the connection point of losing a sibling is such a different grief than other grief that I've experienced. And so to have that connection point with other humans, there's something really magical in that, which is such a dark and heavy thing to hold.
well, and what pops into my mind is like the work that I used to do, a lot of animal communication. At one point in my business, I just did a lot of animals coming, and I still work with animals in some realm if some of my clients are having trouble with their animals, or I always look at the animal wisdom popping in when I'm doing a live call and something is happening to the client's animals. They're giving us messages, but that's often why people would come to me, because I understood the grief of losing my dog, Rugby, and how much of that grief is, nobody can understand that unless you actually own a pet yourself, right? And so having that, I call it a gift for some people who are going through that heavy grief, or the potential of like, oh, am I going to lose my animal? What does that look like? And it does, it gives you this settling in your heart. I think when you find somebody that has that connection point of whatever it is, whether it's grief or not, when you're working with them, it really, I think, gives you this a settle, I don't know, I call it a settling in the heart, because I think about all the women that have come to me this year that have suffered with chronic illness, and just the amount of grief that they've held with medical gaslighting, people not understanding, whether it be at the workplace, their partners, their friends, doctors, all of the things. And there's such grief in the loss of who they were in that process, that when they come to me and I go, I get it. That's all I need to say. I fully 100% get it. There's like this exhale that happens through the nervous system to be sitting and being witnessed by somebody that can fully understand. And that actually brings me to another thing too that I want to talk about, because you're also a human design
Mhm.
coach. And so that human design, I was introduced, I want to say when I was in my 20s and I was living in Taiwan. My sister's like, you need a human design reading forced upon me. And I didn't understand it. I was like, I don't, what is this?
Sounds
So
right.
over my head. Yeah, that's right. And you, I think, I had one reading in 2013, and that lady gave me some insights and offerings that I really appreciated. But you in particular made it easy to
Mm.
understand and to connect with, and just like how else I can bring that in my whole entire life and business, which was really full circle moment for me as well. Do you
Yeah.
want to just talk about how you weave that, both of your, just, I think you also do energy coaching and all these kind of things. So you weave it all together. What do you think makes the magic to weave it all together with the human design standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's a big question, right? I feel like especially as like coaches and people who hold space, we pick up tools along the way, right? And then it's kind of an art like weaving it all together. And even you talking about your animal magic, like even though that's not primarily what you do anymore, I just feel like that's in your magic. And like every time we're voice noting, I'm like, a squirrel has just like jumped onto my shoulder, or like, so there's always an animal
Yeah.
around. So,
Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. There's this
yeah,
statue of a bear who's sitting at the
of
desk that I'm
course.
house sitting for. I was
Of
thinking,
course.
oh, this is going to come up in conversation, and there it
Yeah,
is.
of course. I'm like, just wait. There's gonna be like, I don't know, a bird flying in my window or something throughout this conversation. Who knows? But I think we pick up these pieces of magic along the way. I love the word magic. I believe in real
Yeah.
life magic. We can totally go down the magic rabbit hole, but I we pick up these little pieces of magic along the way, and I think we can put so much, it can be easy to put pressure on like, what does this mean? Where does this fit? Like, who am I now that I have this tool? But instead, if we just let it be that effortless weaving of like, oh yeah, here's the bear statue, here's the squirrel running up the tree, here's the hawk flying overhead. And it's the same for me with like human design. It's a tool in the toolkit. And I trust the intuitive nudge when it comes up to bring that up in session, or if someone comes to me through the entry point of human design versus coming to me through the entry point of coaching. I'm trusting those breadcrumbs along the way. And for me, finding human design, similarly, I found it and I was like, what is this? And then I learned about being a projector, which I am, and you also are. And I was like, no, absolutely not. It's like, I am 100% not that. This chart is not going to tell me anything about myself. So I resisted it really hard at first. And I think one of the reasons that I resisted, I think there's a lot of reasons that I had that resistance kind of come up, but one of the reasons was it just felt like more information. It just felt like this next thing that was like more information. And I feel like we have so much information. And gosh, that was 2018 that it first popped into my life, 2017, 2018, that I first found out like I'm a projector and the information. And I feel like now, even in just like that short time window, we have more information around us. And so, something I'm
Mm.
really passionate about with human design specifically is this isn't about information, it's about integration. So, let's take piece by piece and actually see how it lands in your system, which is really how I moved that resistance for myself and started to understand, like, oh, this is what this means. It's not just like, here's the information, now put it on. It's now like a label and like a box that you're fitting in. It's a continuous experiment that I'm still in now.
And so if somebody's listening to this and they don't even know what human design is, how would you explain it to them with ease? Because I know you, of all people, will be. But, I think sometimes I talk about it a lot that I'm a projector because I feel like if the world just knew human design, things would be easier at the workplaces, except if we just knew everybody's human design. But also, that's not how life is. And when it's like, how do we also have to, like, from my perspective, I teach people how to be wise with their body and their intuition through that realm. So in terms of real life, what does it feel like to be in the room with somebody right now and let your body be the messenger with that? So that's where I come from. But human design offers, I think, a really cool lens of something else. So yeah, if you want to just chat on that.
Yeah. And the most simplistic way I always explain human design is it is a tool that shows you how your energy is designed to operate with the least amount of resistance. And there's so many layers to human design. There's 2 billion different configurations to a chart, but it's all about coming back to ease. The question is always going to be what feels easeful, what feels easeful. It's not so much about what you're doing, it's more about how you're doing it. So, how your energy is moving in the pathways that you're walking, which I think is what kind of gives it a little bit of breath. Whereas, like some of the other modalities have a lot of the what, it has a lot of the what label to it. And human design is like, okay, yes, and how
Mm.
are you moving with that? Yeah.
The yes and is Megan's classic statement to Tara Joe here in our audience coaching container.
I
Yes
need to get you
and as I
a coffee mug that says that.
well, I think about it's such a beautiful gift that you say that to me anyways, because I'm an overthinker and I have an open center, I think, in my I don't know what you guys call it, but my head in human design is
It's
I don't know
in my
what it's called,
head.
but this overthinking cycle does not serve me ever. Not me, personally, not me, and many of my clients as well. That doesn't serve them to be in that overthinking. I call it a hamster wheel. Like, please, someone put the spike in the wheel so I can hop off. And what you had always offered me, especially, when I was navigating a lot of caregiving for my brother, and it was such a shit show. I remember being in this. Number one, I want to talk about this because I wanted to thank you for this. But Megan and I were in a private coaching container together when I got hit by that car, my car accident, for those that are new. And she gifted me a pause graciously without, uh, as a business, that's really hard to do to navigate like the stop of payment on a spur of the moment and not plan for that. But she graciously offered me a pause because in that time my brain was not functioning well. It wouldn't have served any purpose for me. That was not the priority I needed, was to worry about my business. And actually I was out for 18 months. So that was such a gift for me. And then what was interesting is I got to a point in my journey that I could feel myself being stuck on this, I call it the hamster wheel of suffering with this concussion, with these injuries, with why can't I see my brother, and oh, why do I have to follow this insurance company thing? And she was the first person I thought of because she has this magic of clarity that is like none other, that can just whip me from A to B in seconds. Like, you're known as the clarity queen from your clients for a reason. It's not it's just the truth of like what resonates in your being, just being around you. There's like clarity that comes through. And I'm sharing this for a couple of reasons because I think that sometimes things happen in our lives and we just have to trust that it was like from a business standpoint, anybody that's listening to this is in business. I ended up coming around to Megan again and getting this
Yeah.
audio coaching just to get myself through. I just need to put some stuff off my body into WhatsApp, I think we were using at the time, and just get you to help me get my pessimistic attitude, as I would say. Like, I just can't get off of this life sucks, or this is harder than it should be, or whatever it was. Not as bad as I used to be, but definitely with a brain injury, it can change your personality. It can change the way that you see the world. There's a lot of brain injury things that happen with the inflammation and all of those things. And so I did not want to lose myself
Yeah.
in that journey. And so she was the number one person I thought of automatically because we had done audio coaching before. I think not for a longer term, I don't think. I think we just did it in short stints before when I had some work with my expansive program, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew the magic of what that did. And then later on, after Corey passed away, I wanted to be held in something. Could have been even after, I'm trying to think of when we started our 6-month journey. I think it was a 6-month journey together, one to one. But I wanted to be held by somebody that could understand the grief and also understand that I had to get back into my business somehow, some way,
Mm-hmm.
gently but easily. Um, and I haven't talked about this really openly, but during this time of grief, I was taken advantage a lot of by some other
Mm.
coaches where I um, probably put too much of the financial risk into investing into stuff that I don't think I was ready for and tried to get out of it, and they just couldn't hear me.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
couldn't find the words to fight anymore of like this was going to put me into trouble in some way capacity because I had to take responsibility for it as well, right? Um but you offered this place to be where, and as I say this, it's 222 on the clock here, of course,
Yeah.
of feeling the magic every day
Yeah.
and being able to navigate. And you'd always come back to this concept of like, let it be easy, Tara. Let
Yeah.
it just be easy, and navigating the grief. And so I'm curious, if you want to share a little bit of your grief journey now with
Mm.
your brother Kirk and what that looked like. I don't know if you had a business, if you had what your business looked like at the time, but also just even what you've seen, like whether it's through you can use me as an example of working with me in the grief and what you've seen me navigate, but also just even your own story with your brother's loss and what that taught you and kind of how it made you maybe navigate life
Yeah.
and business
Yeah.
differently, because
Yeah.
I think it has. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, totally. Oh my gosh. 100% grief will certainly change. I don't know that it necessarily has to be like our business, but grief is going to mold some area of your life if you're willing to let it. I think some people can definitely just kind of bypass it or different things like that. But yes, I had my business when my brother passed. I actually had probably my most successful months just before he kind of took a downward spiral. So, Kirk had been battling cancer for a really long time. He had it when he was young, and then it went away, and then it came back. And it was always just something he had. So, I think it always felt like, oh, yeah, like he's just gonna get over that. Like he's just gonna get through it. Like I remember laying in his hospice bed being like, oh no, like we're we're leaving together soon. Like this
Uh,
is like I believe in miracles. And he was like no, Megs, this is it. Like this is our final moments together. And it was just such this contrast of life because I was coming out of these like most successful months in my business. I felt incredibly seen. I didn't even know about human design then. I also was very in my ego. I will be the first to tell you I was very in my ego before that. So I think grief has a nice way of rocking the ego too. and bringing you back to really what matters. It can bring you back to the heart in like such a raw and vulnerable way. And we just went on our first around the world trip. We had sold all of our belongings. And we had this plan of like, we're going to travel the world for a year. We're going to see as many countries as we can. I had a very successful business. Andrew had a very successful business. Life was great. I think my like word of the year going into 2018, which was the year Kirk passed, it was in March. I think my word of the year was like abundance or success or something like hilarious that the universe was like, yeah, no, like that's not the lesson you're going to be learning this year. So when he passed, I I mean my whole world was rocked, and the first thing I knew was I can't keep traveling. Like no, I need roots. I need roots right now. Like I cannot be on I can't you know very well, Tara, of like planning where you're going to stay next, and that in itself can feel very jarring to your nervous system, and then navigating grief on top of it. And then in the same month, Andrew, my now husband, we were dating at the time, his business went under. So all these domino effects just happened back to back to back to back to back. And my entire world was just completely rattled. And I'd like to say I was like, oh, and graceful pause, allow the ease in. But I definitely ran the hamster wheel for a little bit and kind of like okay, I got to pick up the pieces. Like, we got to figure this out. We got to keep sustaining things. And I think it's really easy to fall into that when you are navigating grief, even when you're talking about, like, yeah, you made some investments that didn't feel good and then it didn't feel good trying to get out of it. I mean, we can just make really quick decisions in those early seasons of grief. And I think, giving ourselves grace for that is so important. There's so many things that I could say I like, quote, regret in that like early season of grief because I just made so many fast decisions, which looking back now isn't really how I'm designed to operate. But that's what I did. And that's what got me here today. And I think I ran that hamster wheel for a little bit. And then ultimately I was like, okay, this isn't working. The business isn't working the same that it was working before. And I don't want to operate the same way I was working before. Because, like I said, I was really heavily in my ego. I wasn't really liking how I was running my business. And it was right around this time that the moment I was talking about earlier, that human design kind of entered into my life. That was maybe my first touch point on like, okay, what is my energy actually saying? Versus like, I maybe looked at it a little more from the lens of like time. Like, do I have time for this? Okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to like take action constantly. And that's not how projectors are designed to operate, though I have a lot of energy as a projector. So yeah, I think I scrambled for a little bit. And then I was like, hold on, this isn't working. And I had this moment of reset. What are my values now? This is something I talk about often. Like, revisit your values frequently, especially if you're navigating a chapter of grief. I mean, your values might remold all within a year, like 17 different times. And so there was this reconnection of like, okay, what are my values here? What actually matters? There was this huge reset. I ended up picking up some like part-time work during that time just to settle my system and to reset and to get myself back to me, back to myself, which I always say, you're the constant that's coming with you in every single season, every single chapter of your life. Things are going to change. People are going to come and go. People are going to pass. No matter what, you're coming with you in every single chapter. And so that's when I was really like, okay, let me focus on the foundation of me. And that's when I discovered what ease, as we talk about, you brought up a few times, like what ease really means. It's not ease of like, oh, nothing hard's ever going to happen in life again. But it's if I take care of myself in the seasons that are neutral or good or whatever they are, then the seasons that are hard aren't going to feel like this excess pressure. And so looking back, I think, I was operating on such a kind of go, go, go kind of method. And then my brother passed and I tried to keep operating that way. And I was like, oh, this is a recipe for disaster. So that's a bit about the journey. There's probably
Well,
some
and
stuff we
it's
could double tap on in that.
well, there's what stood out for me is that first year. Like
Mm,
this first year is
yeah.
such a wild ride. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, but since the first year anniversary came, I feel like I'm a different human.
Yeah.
It's like just automatically it just stepped in, I went back home and all these things happened back home. And then, it's, I can't even explain it. It's so, I don't even have, do you have words for your first year? Like,
Yeah, no, you're so right. And you just like don't expect it either. Even if you're like someone who's doing the, the work and the
yeah,
self growth just like you are and just like I was at the time. I mean, nothing's going to prepare you for that. Like even if you're
no,
listening and you've not lost someone close to you yet, it's pretty inevitable that we're all going to lose someone at some point in our life. There's just no preparing for it. There's just not.
no.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting for for you to use the word preparing is that prior to all of this happening with Corey,
Mm,
is I had clients in deep grief. One had
mm,
lost her husband, one had lost a pet that was like her
mhm.
soulmate dog, I believe at the time, and then other griefs were kind of, losing my dog Rugby, which was my soulmate dog that was everything to me. All of these
Yeah.
things land, kind of I think prep me for this moment. Even Corey having a stroke in
Mm,
2020 was the prepping of this, like real prep, because that was such a shock. Talk about jarring to the nervous system. That was
yeah.
a real shock to the nervous system because I don't even think I had seen the potential that Corey wouldn't be here,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know? Like, I don't
Yeah.
even think that entered my mind because he was just like a third limb for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's been so hard this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not even hard. Like, it's interesting because when I was working with this client that lost her husband, she had people from her town telling her, get over it.
Mm,
And I was the first person that said to her, just don't listen to them. That is the most ridiculous thing I have
yeah.
ever heard anybody say to somebody who's lost their husband of how many decades? Come on. And so, for me, I've always had this different point of view of how grief is and also being able to feel your feelings, right?
Yeah.
Just being able to really navigate this place of allowance,
Hmm. Yeah.
to just let things be. And if you need to have a day of crying, you have a day of crying. And if you have to have a day of, being going through photos, let it be, and I
Yep.
think, I mean, this just brings up so much for me of what I've just really seen this year, even for the women coming into my monthly membership, the Divine Love Healing Collective, is just how much their life changes when somebody witnesses them in their story
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
fully, like just letting them say
Yep.
it,
Yep.
right? And letting them be held in it and not anybody forcing them to think differently or anything like that. Just like, let's just let it be.
Yeah.
So let the grief be, and I, it was, yeah, it's just interesting because of course I'm navigating, these things with the brain injury and all these things leading up to Corey's care and it wasn't an easy transitional
Yeah.
experience in any way, shape, or form. It is such a mind blowing experience that we went through that, one day the full story will come out. I've kind of
Mm,
teased that on this podcast quite a bit, but I just can't get through it without crying right now, as
yeah.
you could clearly see. It's just so still raw.
It's so
And I think
present.
it will
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
right? I don't
Yeah.
think there's I remember crying for 3 years for my dog, so I can just imagine. My
Yeah.
dad was so sweet this summer. I love my dad. He, said, Tara, I cried for 5 years after my brother died.
Mm,
Five
yeah.
years, he said. It took me 5 years to get
Yeah.
to a point where I could talk about him without. And that's what I needed to hear.
Mhm. Yeah. You're like amplifying something that was so important in that first year where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like, I'm gonna ground into my nice little apartment and then I'm just gonna like work my way through this. I don't think that I would have labeled it as that then, but I was just like, oh yeah, I'll just ground into my apartment and then we'll figure it out. And that's really not how grief operates. And that learning to
Yeah.
be with, and that learning of what does it mean to amplify emotions, and trust that they're temporary. If you're someone who has navigated like anxiety or depression, it can feel scary to be with your emotions and it can feel incredibly unsafe. But that was something I really learned that year, of what it means for an emotional wave to pass and then to come back up. Because I find in grief that everything's amplified. So, like, the sadness is amplified, the anger is amplified. Also, the joy can be really amplified if you're open to that and you let that in. I mean, I just think about like all the magic Corey leaves you that you're always sharing. Like, you're
Yeah.
constantly finding magic that Corey's left. And if we can amplify those moments as much as we're amplifying the grief and the waves and the anger and everything else, and we just learn to be with each one as they flow, there's something really beautiful about that. And I think that was probably the biggest lesson I learned in that year. I switched my word of the year to grace. And that's 100% everything I learned, to give myself grace. If I
Mm,
was just in the middle of the grocery store and started crying, all right,
yeah.
we're in the grocery store crying now. Like, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And actually there's so many beautiful connections in that too. I can't tell you how many times I would start crying in public and just that right person would be there that would see me, witness me in my story, like you're saying. And then this connection point of, they lost someone and we got to share these stories with each other. And to me, that's part of, I have like full body goosebumps right now, which I love those moments. But that's part of how we keep them with us, is in their stories. And every time you share about Corey, I feel him and I feel his energy. And I feel the same with Kirk, that every time I tell a story of him, that it keeps his energy with me. And that feels like magic.
Well, and it's just, oh, grief in public, hey? So I was at a dog park
Yeah.
once this in January. I was dog sitting near Vernon, BC in Canada here. And there was a gentleman at the dog park and we were talking. And I said something about my brother Corey, because it's just like I just talk about him all the time because he comes up in
Hmm.
conversation. I mean, there's what show has he not watched, or what, like there's just so many touch points to him. But he had this miniature husky, and my brother loved huskies. That was like one of his favorite dogs, even though he was scared of dogs, the huskies was his favorite. And so we had this conversation point, but he shared that he had lost his mom to, I think it was suicide, if I'm correct. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. And so there was this, he's like, well, since you told me that, I'm going to share something with you. That's exactly what he said to me. And as a projector who loves invitations, I felt like I offered him this open door to
Yeah.
be held in something, for him to just get it off his chest. And that was a really beautiful experience for me for many reasons. Like, I live alone. I don't see a lot of people. I don't go to a workplace. And so the dog park is often where I'll go, and I can go places and nobody wants to talk to you. And I'll go places where people will want to chat with you, but it's like this, I love to have conversations that are real, not like,
Hmm.
how's the weather today? It's not really, I could do without that, right? So it was such a beautiful gift. And I think too, this is also what I'm going to say about offering that grief, telling the story, sharing the things about Corey's story also offers people to think about that for themselves.
Yes.
So, I have clients that have children with disabilities,
Mhm.
whether that be autism or Down syndrome or a physical, and so it's for them, it's allowing them to think about something they never even thought they would have to think about when it comes to planning, when it comes to what it can look like, what the state of discrimination and things are for these individuals. And it gives this offering. And I think even just for adults who don't even have that in their realm, but me sharing the story of the heartache and the shit show is like, God, I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah.
The ridiculous shit show we had to go through as a family. If I don't share it, who will?
Yeah.
And then in that offering, it offers people a different, I'm all about offering people a different perspective However they
Mhm.
receive it is up to them, but I'm going to keep doing it because the
Yeah.
world's not going to change unless we do,
Yeah.
unless we keep offering these gifts. But I feel you were talking about signs, these magical
Yeah.
signs. So Corey shows me lots of signs all over the place. And one of the biggest ones this year after he passed away was heart clouds. I had always seen hearts in stones and rocks and other places, but clouds had never been an offering to me up until the point that he passed away. And now it's showing up as if my clients ask for Corey to show them a heart cloud. There it is,
Yeah.
which is like, that's like number one, my clients are so awesome.
Yeah.
So
Isn't
beautiful.
that the best?
I can't even. I mean, really, it's just like for them to be along for the ride and the magic is just, I mean, come on, that's like the warm hug times 1,000, right?
Yeah.
I just honestly, I can't even talk. My clients are just the most 10 out of 10, highly recommend.
Yes.
And like they're just, that's just fun.
Yeah.
And that makes, I think about your back to you contain like do you call it, what do you call it, a program, what do you call it, a monthly membership,
Call it
what's your
whatever you
back to you?
want. Container's great. Often I call it a membership. It feels more than a membership though.
Yeah.
So I've been playing with
Well,
that word
yeah.
actually. Yeah.
So I'm in Megan's membership. And so in that we have, these little moments where we can just go in there and share the magical moments. This month especially, we're kind of playing
Mm-hmm.
with that, right? And I played
Yeah.
with the magical monthly May with I did 7 days of free audio coaching for my group,
Yeah.
or for my monthly membership this, and they had never done that. Some of the members had never done an audio thing with me before,
Mm-hmm.
so they got some real magic of what that looks like. It was actually really incredible
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
looking for the magic, when you offer that to people. What shows up is just more than you can't have an expectation, number one, but like even if you expected something to be and you're open to something more, I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. That's that amplification of let me open my eyes. And to me, that's like one of the best ways we can create like a little more ease in my life. Because often when we don't have ease, we're kind of like really hyper zoomed in and we're like caught up or in that overthinking pattern, or we're feeling super overwhelmed, so we're like really tight in, and it's like let me open my perspective and look for the magic, and if anything maybe it just gives me that space to breathe, and then I can come on back, and now I have a refreshed energy to approach whatever it is I'm approaching.
Yeah, I mean, I just had the most magical trip coming out to this next house sit that I'm in.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was a coincidence. I think you held the magic container for us because I've been part of that, right? Number one. And I always just feel inspired in nature. It's hard not to
Yeah.
when these lime green colors are showing up for you in springtime and
Yeah.
these, just really, and Corey's magic was all around, really, like everything from hiking to this A&W root beer can being on the edge of the mountain, which by the way is not recommended and highly terrible for people to leave behind. But I also looked at all of the pop cans that could have been left behind as like one of Corey's favorites, right? And
Yeah.
so I look at those things, it's just, I'd rather, this is what I always say to my clients and people are wondering whether they should work with me, is I look at life with a lens of curiosity because that is way more fun for me. And when I started to look at life with that lens of curiosity, the depression faded,
Yeah.
like the intensity
Yeah.
of it, the intensity of like where I was at in that dark night of the soul compared to, and just being like, also just even navigating things that are challenging. It doesn't feel so heavy. It can still feel heavy,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to feel 100 pounds. It can now feel like 10,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then that energy of, what could this be about? Or like a little kid with a magnifying glass, like Dora the
Mm-hmm.
Explorer, like, where are we going? What are we doing with this? It takes the intensity of, just the heaviness that life can be. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember during COVID where so many businesses were suffering, so many people were complaining, so many people were angry and pissed off, and my business was thriving.
Hmm.
because I was like, oh, what's this about? What is this about? Let's just be curious about it. And what could I have happen during this time that I could have an offering of some sort? And I just remember offering like an immune seer at the time I was doing, I think, body code or body talk healing sessions. And so I just offered something for immune system. It was mind blowing to me how many people got into that offering that was
Yeah.
free
Yeah.
just to ease the stress and anxiety about getting sick, first of all. And then it just kind of escalated from there. And that was about, I think when you get curious, you really listen to your intuition.
100%. 100%. Curiosity is one of my favorite tools forever and ever. I've always been a curious human, and I
Yeah.
think it's curiosity and awareness are probably two of the best tools to come back to always. I had a very similar experience in 2020. Actually, like 2 weeks before the world shut down, I had quit a job. So I had taken on a job for some stability. 2 weeks before the world shut down, I quit. No idea that was going to happen.
No.
And then that happened, and I was like, oh, and what direction am I going to go in? Right? That's what
Yeah.
you're talking about right here. Like, okay, I can make a choice. I can panic and
Hmm.
be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to flail. And like, I can't believe, why would I quit that job? I had a job. All of my previous coworkers got like I mean, it wasn't like a severance package, but they were doing things in COVID where
Yeah.
people just basically got a paycheck, but were not going into work.
Yeah.
And easily I could have latched onto that and been like, I made a mistake. I did something wrong. Judgment, 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 judgment. But instead, I was like, wait, there was a reason I did that. And I'm going to trust that decision I made. And then I'm going to use curiosity of where can we go next. And then I ended up having one of the biggest months in my business. So I
Mm,
think curiosity and just what am I attaching meaning onto here? That's something I always
mm.
come back to. What am I attaching meaning onto here? And then what if I started to shift that? Or what if there was no meaning at all?
Yeah.
That that that's the place I try to get to of like, what if there was no meaning here at all? Okay, now I can see I can use curiosity in like a really clear lens.
Mm.
Yeah.
I just gotta sit with that for a second. I don't think I've ever heard you say that.
That's
What if there
shocking.
was, what if there's no meaning at all?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, humans are
that's
meaning making
interesting.
machines. Like, we will attach meaning onto anything we can get our hands on. And so, if I can take that pause and go, okay, wait, what's the meaning I'm putting here? Okay, I'm making this mean that, let's use the job example. I quit this job. Everyone then gets easeful paycheck. I didn't have a plan. I like to do that sometimes, just quit or move or whatever without a plan. It always works. There's always a breadcrumb to
Yeah.
follow. I could have easily attached this meaning of like, God, I'm so irresponsible. I can never like just be happy with what I have. Like, that's me attaching meaning to it. But instead, it was like, wait, I made that decision for a reason. I'm going to trust that. Okay, there's no meaning on that at all. Now I can move forward.
Mm. Love this. I love the trust word because I was thinking about, I think it was a client last week that, I said to her, you know that you've gotten through hard times
Mm,
before because we all have. And
yeah,
sometimes it's such a remembering to come back to that moment of trusting that we've got through it and things were better, or
yeah,
they showed us something different, or they gave us different opportunities and those kind of things. And I know this year I've had to really tap into that trust a lot
yeah,
of going, like, I know, well, especially in the car accident, when I got past the point of feeling sorry for myself,
yeah.
that was really hard because there's so much in that car accident journey that was the most challenging. I say this to my client, it was the most challenging time in my life. And I've been through a lot of challenging things. It was probably the most challenging thing in my life because everything that I had known up until that point, how to get grounded, how to feel better, how to shift my energy of what I would normally have done, I didn't have the
Mhm.
ability to do that. I couldn't walk out my door. I couldn't drive to the mountains. I couldn't be in nature
Yeah.
because I couldn't walk without falling over, feeling dizzy or nauseous. I couldn't even talk straight. A lot of the time, I started to stutter. I couldn't think. I couldn't even tap into my intuition, which, do you know what that's like for somebody that leads their life that way? It
Yeah.
was the most challenging time, let alone my brother, who I love so dearly, was stuck in a hospital
Yeah.
unfairly
Yeah.
and the bullshit that was there. It was really crazy. And I still don't think that I am completely, um, it's not the word healed that I'm looking for here, but it's like,
Mm.
I feel like there's still so, like, what is that about? And I remember going through that going,
Yeah.
I don't know what this is about. I will find out one day. That I know for sure.
Yeah.
But right now, I do not know why I
Yep.
was hit by that car really hard on that day. No clue on the way to the hospital to see Corey because I was in Saskatchewan when it happened. I have no
Mm.
clue, but I'm going to trust that I will know.
Yeah.
And I'll trust that this is just supposed to be. I don't know why.
Yep.
But because I knew I had gone through A to Z already in my life, that was really hard
Yeah.
and it all came out fine. And the other thing too, just talking about business being successful, my business was the most successful it's
Yeah.
ever been when I got
Yeah.
hit by that car.
Isn't it
And
funny how that happens?
that was such a, I don't know, what is the word to explain that feeling that just felt like,
Yeah.
like what the actual is this about,
Yeah.
universe?
Yeah.
And then you go through all of these things like, is this the path that I'm not supposed to be on? But why?
Mhm. Yeah.
But I really liked what I was doing. Why is this not the path? Like, what is this? What do you have
Yeah.
for me that I had to go through this?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
add the death of my best friend. Like, what the,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think something I like even I think it started when I was processing grief. That idea that like everything happens for a reason. Ever since grief, I started to believe that wasn't true. And I think this is partly the like meaning we're attaching to things. Because and I think that idea that like everything happens to a reason has the potential to like drive you mad. Because if you're experiencing something like the death of your brother, like both of us have
yeah,
experienced, to try and find a reason for that, the
yeah,
reason for that loss, like, yes, there's purpose that came from it and there's joy that came from it, but God, I know both of us would give anything for one more human
yeah,
day, one more
totally.
conversation, one more bear hug. Like neither of us could sit here and say like, no, it's good that happened for a reason. And, and we do still have a connection now. And that's something you and I talk about all the time with our, like, I have a connection with Kirk. You've talked so much about your connection with Corey. That is very real. And the idea that there's like a reason for everything, even like you talking about your car wreck, to try and find a reason for that, I mean, it could just spiral you for a while. And I think that's part of like the let me detach the meaning a little bit because there's a certain point where it's like what's the point, why am I still digging this up?
Yeah.
And
Well, what's popping into my mind too, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
it's like this, what is the offering in that if we let that go for a second when it
Mm,
comes to grief, especially to grief? If we let the possibility go that it's for no reason, like that we don't need to know the reason. Let's just leave it
mm-hmm.
at that. We don't need to know the reason right now. Then I
Yeah.
feel like there's spaciousness there. And in that
Yes.
spaciousness, anything can pop, that's anything can show up. Because I think sometimes when we are digging for a reason, we're not going anywhere fast.
100%.
Right? And
Yeah.
so it's like, oh yeah, like I could just even feel like something like boom, wide open there for me, even as you were saying that, because I was on this podcast, I don't know, a couple months ago called the Grief Empowered podcast with
Mm,
Chris.
yeah.
Really beautiful human, such a beautiful human that man is, and what he's doing. And I'm going to be writing in a book with him about Corey's,
Yeah.
which is kind of exciting. That's my little teaser here. But I I was talking about this with him because, you know, he's talking to, I think he's probably talked to about 65, at least 65 individuals right now that have gone through grief in all different ways. He said there's not one person
Mm.
in his podcast, not one single person that's gone through the same grief in the same way.
Yep.
And it's everything from people that have been murdered to fire to
Mhm.
just cancer journeys to every, like, really interesting. And he said every single person, found like something to live their life with through it.
Mhm.
But you can't say that to somebody when they just lost
Mm.
somebody.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mistake a lot of people will say
Mm.
because they've never, and I think it's coming from people who have never either dealt with grief properly themselves or
Mhm.
no, have never ever had a loss such as someone so close like a brother,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That they just don't understand that concept because why do we have to, why can't we just witness somebody in their grief? Why can't we just let them cry? What is
Yeah.
the uncomfortableness of that? What
Yeah.
is wrong with that?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to do a shout out to my clients. This is also a reason why I love my clients because I'll be doing live Facebook videos or even in the Divine Love Healing Collective monthly membership with my one-to-one calls. And if something comes up, just because it does, it
Yep.
always does with Corey, I will shed a tear, whether that's through laughter or crying or hearing somebody else's thing. It just happens. And not one person makes me feel uncomfortable about it, and vice versa, because I've laid the groundwork that it is okay to just feel what you need to feel in the moment, than masking it like the bullshit that's been told to us for decades and decades and decades. Because the more that we mask those feelings when we are in a grief scenario like this, the worse it is for our body. And that's where illness starts to stem from, is when we
Yes.
clasp on to those things so tightly and not being able to speak up and not be able to like process that stuff, which I'm seeing through other people in my life that are dealing with grief right now, where it's showing up in the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And normalizing these like feelings is such a huge purpose of mine. And I think it comes from being told not to for so long,
Yeah. I think that's why
right?
these conversations are so important though, because as you were talking about, like, people say things to people in grief because they don't know how to hold it, because it's something as a society we kind of avoid talking about, like
Yeah.
unless there's a funeral, and that's like kind of all we talk about. And it's not something we talk about in school, even though it's like something we're all inevitably going to face at some point.
Yeah.
It's just like it's so scary for people to go there and to face the concept of it that we just don't talk about it at all, which is why these conversations are just so important. And also, I love how much you've brought up how much you love being in space with your clients. It just makes my heart so happy because isn't that how we should all be working? I don't use the word
Yeah.
should often, but I
Yeah.
feel like that is how all of our work lives should feel like lit up. We should feel amplified. We should be able to feel seen as ourselves, not that we have to put this facade on, because we're
Yeah.
all humans and there's no better than, like, it's just, we could go
Yeah.
down a whole rabbit hole on that, but it just ignites me so much to hear that, of like, how beautiful is that we have spaces where we can just show up fully as ourselves. Like,
Yeah.
this is me today, and it's accepted and it's
Yeah.
celebrated.
Well, and just I saw something the other day through a friend of mine where she's like, said something around, wouldn't it be nice if we could just show up not as what we think the high school friend will say to us or should,
Oh,
like that we still think about, even though I'm 4 to 7 and I still think things that happened. Like it's just still so raw and real
yeah.
that what we went through as children
Yep.
really have shaped who we are, including what we might or might not put out in the world and
Yeah.
whatever we create.
Yeah.
Right. It's so interesting, which is like, it's kind of why I'm going to be putting out this 3 month, immersive experience called Unleash Your Lioness, because it's like,
Mm.
I really feel especially for women right now, there's something happening with women who really need to speak up and
Yeah.
speak out and be themselves more and really like honor that pathway for themselves wherever they're at. Because I think that's all, we're always evolving, we're always getting to a different place. You know, if I was to see, say to myself even 3 years ago, would I be here right now on a podcast? I would have never have thought that.
Mm, yeah.
I would have
Yeah.
never had the thing in me to who gives a shit what people think I have to say. Like I just want to say the thing. I just need to say the thing. And you actually helped me with that because I remember hearing one thing from one coach friend of mine who said it was hard. And then I just didn't want to think I wanted to do it because I thought,
Yeah.
but that's, oh, like just how much we limit ourselves by what we hear.
Hmm.
And just all of a sudden we take it on like that has to be our story, but it doesn't. And how spacious that is to let it go and see what
Yeah.
gets uncovered from that. So all of that is like spun in this program I'm going to be putting out because I really feel
Yeah.
that's necessary right now for women, no matter where you are in your life and what you're trying to create.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, first of all, your program is going to be a magical. I feel like so many of your gifts are ignited in that. So I'm so excited for all
Yeah.
who enter into that. And yeah, I think that's like part of we talked very briefly about like the energy coaching work that I do that I kind of weave in as well. And that's part of what brought that in is we carry those things, and I know you're on the same page of this. We carry those things in our body, not just our mind, and
Yeah.
we can't always think our way out of it. And I think that's where a lot of people end up doing the hamster wheel thing of just like I can think my way out of it, but then we get caught in the pattern of overthinking, and then maybe we start to think like, well, okay, well, something's wrong with me because I can't think my way out of this thing. And so getting into your body, I think, is so important for those stories that we hear and the stories that we hold. I remember I was being coached. I was the client in an energy coaching session, and we were navigating something similar that we're talking about, where every time I was getting on a Zoom call with colleagues, my chest would get bright red. And I wanted to
Mm,
let that go. And so we were navigating it in my body, and up popped this random memory that, like, I probably couldn't have pulled out if we were just in normal conversation
yeah.
from middle school. And
Mm,
those things live in we have a whole body from the neck down that we forget about. And if you can take that moment to drop in, even talking about your podcast, if we can take that moment to drop in and go, wait, is that mine? Oh, I don't know if that's actually my story right now. Okay. And we just let things land. Like, that's such an important tool, our body, so much more than a tool. It's such an important skill and grace period you can give yourself is to just wait, let me pause and just drop in and discern like, is this actually my story? Is this actually what I want? Is this actually where I want to go next? And just really learn to be with yourself and hear yourself. That's when I feel like you unlock the ease and the magic and your pathway, because your pathway is going to be your pathway. It's no one else's pathway. So, coach who said podcast was hard, maybe it was, and that wasn't her pathway. But gosh, your
mm.
magic on the mic, it's amazing. Like listening to those first episodes you put out, I could like feel the vibrations come through, and that's our sweet spot. That's our magic. I don't even
Yeah.
know how we got on that, but I feel excited about
It,
it.
it's like, see, there it is with the thumbs up somewhere on the screen for those that are watching. But um, oh yeah, well, this actually, just briefly, I was kind of thinking about this earlier when we were talking about human design.
Mm,
As a projector, so for those that are new, they might not know what all the human design
very
people
true.
are, but I would be curious if you could just run through them really quickly so that maybe it would stimulate somebody to even, um, do you have a free chart on your website for human design? Yeah, you do, right? So we could send them in the show notes to your website for them to fill out their human design chart if they haven't already,
Yep.
and get some insights just in that landing. But do you feel like you could go through that just briefly? If
Yeah,
you, yeah.
definitely. Definitely. So the Yes, so the way you pull your human design information is with your birthday time and location. So that's all you have to input in. And yeah, we'll link that in the show notes for you to pull your chart. But as I said earlier, there's 2 billion different configurations of a human design chart. I won't run through all 2 billion right now. But the first layer of that is what's called your energy type. So that's kind of the foundation to your entire design. And then there's layers and layers underneath that, because every single human being is different. So the 5 main types, we have our generators. They're really our creators. We have our, I'm really going to do this in high speed, and then we can go back if we need to go
Yeah.
back into any of them. Our manifesting generators, who are like our multi-passionate fast movers. We have our projectors, which myself and Tara are. I like to think of projectors as the lighthouse. They're our guides. They're incredible at optimizing energy. Our manifestors are our spark, they're our initiators, and then our reflectors are like our mirrors. They really amplify the energy of the space. I'll do this backwards now. Our reflectors make up about 1% of the population, manifestors are about 9%, projectors are about 20%, and then manifesting generators and generators. Oh my gosh, what is the math? The math, I have to do math on this podcast. They either make up 70% or 80%, and then there's a split between those. It's about like, oh, okay, my brain. We're nearing the end of the day here, so I'm totally blanking on the percentages, but they make up the highest percent of the population.
Well, and you know what? It's so interesting, like to I had my sister does human design and she did a guest expert spot for us
Oh,
with
fun.
the like my members in the
Yeah.
collective that were in there at the time. And it was really cool to learn about everybody's style as a leader of that, right? To
Yeah.
know kind of where people were coming from and the lens that they, but it's so interesting too. I don't know, I find it so interesting just even thinking of a client right now that I'm working with that she's a manifester and holy does she
Yep.
do things quick.
Yep. So
Like,
fast.
I'm having a nap by listening to her, to
Yeah.
her and what she does. It's
Yep.
mind blowing to me. But it's such a remembering that that's like her journey. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
mine. And it still means that we're still living life large the way that we want to, and it's still successful
Yes.
for us. That's what I really want to share here because
Yeah.
sometimes we're looking on Instagram and Facebook and all the things that are out there. We scroll, we compare ourselves to everybody and everything that they've done. And I'm sure people even say that as they see me traveling and they're saying things and that's not what it's about. It's everybody's journey is different and how we navigate and how we create things are different. And it doesn't mean that one's better than the other
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
such magic, like it's such a magic to watch my clients do this
Mm-hmm.
in different ways and what they're navigating. And also it's such a gift to observe it as
Yeah.
well, rather than, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
it's
you
so
know what I
cool.
mean? Because
Yeah.
this is like your thing. It's human design's your thing, right? It's not my, I'm not an expert in it, right? So what do you think that's about? What do you think that's about that's like, what do you think that's in me that's exciting for me to see that
Yeah.
for, and
Yeah.
not, I mean, I'm really, I'll tell you, I'm proud of myself that I'm not in a place of going the jealousy vibe because I'm sure people tap into that often, right? This jealousy thing
Mm-hmm.
around why is she doing this and that. But I actually I kind of think about, oh, I would like a little bit of your energy today. How about I
Mm-hmm.
just tap into a little bit of your energy buzz to
Yep.
put the sales page together, right?
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
I'll tap out of it. Like I think that's the energy. I mean, what are those called in the chart? The chart,
The
like if you're
aura.
working with somebody, you can get
Yeah.
their
Their aura.
buzz, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
sometimes just leave my house to
Yep.
go, nobody understands this, but I'll go out to be around people I don't know, just
Yep.
people at a coffee shop or whatever, just to get the energy again in my body.
Yep.
It's the
Yeah.
weirdest thing, and it works
Yeah.
every time. But if I do
100%.
it too long, then it's
Yep.
backfires,
Yep.
right? As a
Yeah. Makes
projector,
all
I
of
don't
the
know if that's just a
sense.
project. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, it makes
interesting.
so much sense. It makes so much sense. Yeah, I think you have a split in your definition as well, which amplifies that even more. Um, and then your ideal environments is markets, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so that like that buzz can activate some clarity within you. Yeah, it's fascinating. So learning other people's human design is what actually hooked me into human design. And
Mm,
honestly, it was 100% pulling Kirk's chart that hooked me into human design.
mm.
And I saw every single gift that he lived. And
Aw.
what a gift it was that he lived fully as himself. What a gift that is. That is the best gift we can leave with this earth. And that's what hooked me in. And there is something so magical about learning other people's how they operate and their gift and their essence and seeing them in it. It activates something within you. So I think, yeah, we get the like spark and the buzz and we get activated in that way, but there's also just such a gift when we see someone just living as themselves, and that's what lives on. Like when I hear stories about Kirk now, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's Kirk, like that's what lives on with him. And he was so in line with his energy. Actually, he was a manifester, so I know that manifester
Oh,
energy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I feel like I just got a second podcast episode idea with you and I. I would love to do a whole episode on Corey's chart.
Fun,
Wouldn't that be, I think that would be
yes.
so cool
Oh my
just
gosh,
to
so
be
fun.
part of the story of sharing my brother's story. That actually might be really kind of incredible to do live,
Yeah,
I think, too.
yeah.
And it could make it into the book that I
Oh,
write someday. I
so
am writing. I
magical.
shouldn't say someday. I am writing it.
Yeah.
It's in my it's in my computer. But that would be
Yay.
really cool. That's such a I was crying when you were talking about that with Kirk because I know I've heard you share that, but right now in this moment, it felt like it was the first time me hearing that
Mm,
through you to hear that and just, yeah,
yeah.
the way of honoring. There's,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
beautiful.
And it gave me this lens of where I was living out of alignment. And then I was like, oh, wait. And that's back to what we were talking about earlier of like grief gives you a way of noticing what matters. It's like, oh, wait, I don't want to
Mm.
get to the end of my days and be like, I burnt myself the F out for the last however many years. Awesome. I want to feel aligned and alive. There's that great quote. Um, Gosh, it was Emma Bombeck, I think it was her last name. It's like, by the end of my days, I want to stand in front of God and say, I've used it all up. Like, thank you. I've used it all up. And that is, I butchered the words a little bit, but it's one of my favorite quotes. And so every day I'm just looking at how am I using up my energy? What is the direction my energy is going in today? Yeah.
The quote's so beautiful. I remember after losing Corey, just how much I felt like the bullshit didn't matter anymore. Like in terms of people draining my energy,
Hmm.
um, people not believing in what I do. I mean, I could do a whole podcast on what this, like the thing, when you were talking about tapping into your values earlier, that you just keep telling people to go back to their values. I mean, grief does that. Grief allows you, it's like an initiation into, are you sure that's how you want to lead your life? Like,
Yeah, it
what is this?
is.
And I'm going to even say that as I continue to navigate grief in different ways, in many ways, like, Bailey will come to the end of his life at one point again, and I will
Mm,
have to navigate that grief and what that will look like. But it's not just a loss of someone, it can be a loss of career, relationships, housing. Like, there's so many different grief journeys we take. And I think that I just want to, share that before we say goodbye here, that this,
yeah.
I mean, we could talk a lot about grief. There honestly, and I know if you're just in a brand new grief journey,
Hmm.
you will not believe me when I say this, but there is so much magic in the grief
Mm, hmm.
if you could just let yourself be there.
Hmm.
And I'm going to tell you, if you want to be able to believe that, get into the room with other people that do.
Yes.
Be witnessed and held by somebody like Megan or I, where we can actually see what we can help you with and help support you through that grief so that you can see and and enjoy your life at the same time, because it's not one or the other. It is joy and grief, sadness and like it's
Yeah.
and it's not just one or the other. And I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned this year, because I went into it knowing that Corey was going to be magical. He was a magical freaking human on Earth.
Yeah.
I knew he wouldn't not be, right? And he's showed me all the animals. The animal wisdom that's been coming in is magnified, because Corey lived in the realm of like loved animals,
Mm.
Lion King, all the things, Jurassic Park, all of the things. So of course magical wisdom is coming through animals, even more amplified for me. But so I feel really blessed. Like I feel
Yeah.
really blessed that the universe and God has provided me with this ability to tap into that realm, because I think this would have been a lot harder
Yeah.
if I didn't believe in that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I love that you brought up like all the capacities we can experience grief too. And I feel like that's one way. Again, we can't prepare for loss, but I feel like when we let ourselves grieve those other things instead of just like, I'm going to be strong, I lost a job or I lost a home, or we grieve parts of ourselves, versions of ourselves that are no longer, and we can grieve that. Even if we didn't want it, you can grieve things you don't even want. And
Mm.
when we can let ourselves go there, I won't say it prepares us for loss, but we learn how to hold what it is to have those waves rush over us. So I love that you brought that up in our closing today.
Yeah, so beautiful. Do you want to just share um how, like, if somebody wanted to work with you, what is the clients that you work with? What is sort of your ideal situation of how you can
Yeah.
gift somebody, if somebody does want to work with you, what could they do to find you?
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me into that. I mostly work with women who are very purpose driven women, maybe have created some variations of success, but are maybe have dropped some pieces of themselves along the way, are looking for that full alignment that we've talked about so much in this conversation, that full fulfillment. It's like something's missing, but I can't put my finger on it. I work with a lot of women who are in a season of grief or some type of transition, some type of in between, learning to hold that both and that we've talked about a lot today, too. So, yeah, those are the people I work with. And you can find me. We'll link up the human design chart where you can pull your human design chart in the show notes. So you can find me there. And then also, my Back to You container is currently open as well. Oh, look, I
Oh.
use the word container instead of membership. Maybe that's the new word it'll be folding into.
Yeah.
And that's really the space to come back to yourself over and over again. I said earlier in the episode, the constant in life is you. And so that's the space where you always come back to you when we use all of the tools we've talked about today. Human design, energy work, and coaching are all weaved into that space.
So beautiful. And it's such a gift to work with Megan, honestly. So if you've never had the chance, please follow her on Instagram, get the human
Yeah.
design chart, get on her email list, because she does a love letter at least once a week, if not twice, I think. So it's been such a magical journey to be a part of your life so far. Can't wait to see what's ahead of us both. And be happy to have you back anytime you have something fun to share on
Yeah.
whatever journey that is for yourself. So thank you for coming here today. Really appreciate it. And have a beautiful rest of your day, everybody. Be kind. Lots of love. Bye.